Stable Moments makes the bold statement that we are ending the foster care crisis one mentor at a time. And we believe that we can do that. We can make that bold statement because I don't believe that blanket policy changes are going to lower the number of kids coming into care. They may change it, but I've been doing this for over 10 years, and the numbers have stayed right about the same, right about that 400,000 children being in the foster care system, and there's simply not enough beds. And even if there were enough beds, I don't believe just containing kids is what we need to do to end the foster care crisis. To end the foster care crisis, I think that we need less kids coming into care. And how do we get less kids coming into care? Well, we have to end the generational cycle of foster care. And how do we do that? Well, we invest in the individual child. We meet the child where we're at. We understand their strengths and interests. We pour into them. We build their self-confidence. We build their life skills so that they can make healthy transitions into adulthood. And ultimately, they have kids that don't go into care. And that's where we see our numbers go down. And it seems so simple that we just need to invest in the individual child. But that's the hardest thing to do, right? To get a person to give time to an individual child over time and really invest and be there and show up. But that's what we do through one-on-one mentorship with Stable Moments. So what I don't want to do is talk about the foster care crisis all the time and have other people reiterate that, but not fully understand what we're talking about with the foster care crisis. And I also want people to understand that we truly believe, it's not just a claim that we're ending the foster care crisis. We truly believe that the way to doing that is individual investment in the child. So I recently did a presentation on the foster care crisis. So this month's episode, what I'd like to do is share that presentation on the foster care crisis. And this can be a great episode, not only for you, but if there is anybody that you're trying to raise awareness of the foster care crisis and you want to let people know about the foster care crisis and you want them to be more educated just so that they can understand where do they fit into the solution, then I would love you to be able to share this episode because May is Foster Care Awareness Month. So this is a great episode for you to put on your social medias to start having conversations with friends. And even if you don't share this episode, it may give you some talking points on the foster care crisis and really what we can do to help end it. So I'm going to roll that intro and then dive right in. I'm Rebecca Britt, and this is the Stable Moments Podcast. I started this podcast to understand from all perspectives how we can help end the foster care crisis. The overwhelming response was we need to support our local communities. Unwanted, abandoned, orphaned children are the community's responsibility. We must support, guide, love, invest, raise up generations that will nurture, love, and support their own children to end this crisis. So, the purpose of this podcast is to build an army of people that are interested and willing to take responsibility of our foster youth and who are supportive of foster and adoptive families. This is the on-ramp for people who want to get involved but might not know where to start. I want this to be a place where community members feel like they can make a difference, where they feel good enough to make that difference, and believe that they can be a big deal in the life of a child. Thanks for being part of our community, and make sure to join the conversation in the Stable Moments Podcast Facebook group. Together, we can end the foster care crisis. So the foster care system is in crisis, and I don't know how long it's been in crisis, but I know that at least for the last 15 years, it has been, and nothing's really changed. Hundreds and thousands of children enter the system every year due to abuse, neglect, or unsafe living conditions, and there's not enough homes, caseworkers, or support systems to meet the growing need. So when we say it's in crisis, it literally isn't able to do what it was meant to do. The goal of foster care was safety and stability. We, at some point in our history, did away with orphanages. We decided that it would actually be better to have individual community members offer their home with some training and some support to be able to house children in a family setting rather than an orphanage setting, which is great. And now, usually before we put a kid in foster care, all kinship options are exhausted. So we don't just take kids from an unsafe situation and directly put them in foster care. We try to find mom, dad of the parents, so grandpa, grandma, an aunt, anybody who is a relative of the child, so that the child can have some continuity and have somebody that they know take them in. Just a little example, my husband was a cop for years in Atlanta, and there was one day when he got a call for a woman in the bathroom. And so he went into the bathroom and realized that there was a woman in there passed out from drug use. So he was arresting her. And when he went out to her car, he realized there was a baby in the back seat. So that's when he called Department of Children and Families. And he also tried to call mom of so grandma to the kid, grandpa, tried to call the kid's biological dad and brother. Like, there was a lot of outreach going on to see if anybody could come pick up the kid off the scene. When he couldn't find anybody, that's when he called Department of Children and Families. And he also had to show up at a court hearing the next day, an emergency hearing. And during that emergency hearing, they were trying to figure out which family member could take this kid, and nobody in the family could offer a clean urine sample. So everybody was using drugs, nobody was able to take the kid, and then the kid did go into emergency foster placement. So they try really hard to get somebody that knows the kid. So the kids that are going into care are ones that those options have been exhausted. When possible, the system aims to reunify children with their biological families after addressing the safety concerns. So in that particular example, they would try to get mom clean and try to get her in a spot where she could provide clean urine samples and that she had a safe living environment. They would support her as much as they could through that and try to get her to a place where she could reunify with the child. Some people believe that foster care is just out there to remove kids from biological parents and put them in a home that would do better. But I think it's a pretty common belief now that we think that kids should be with their biological parents. Kids and parents should be together. So the goal is reunification. If reunification isn't possible, though, the goal becomes permanent home through guardianship or through adoption. So parents usually get their rights terminated, which it is very difficult to terminate a parent's rights. So sometimes this delays things. But once that termination of parental rights has taken place, then the child is available to be adopted or for long-term placements. Now, the experience of removal for a child is traumatic, even when necessary for safety. So there might be a belief that, oh, thank God somebody came in and removed that kid from that home. And you would see a kid's condition, maybe from abuse or neglect, and say, thank goodness. But the child knows that environment, and it's very traumatic for a kid to be taken into care, regardless of where they're coming from. And whether or not we think that that isn't a good environment for a child, often if that's all a child knows and that's their normal, they would actually rather stay there. So it's always traumatic. Children are often taken from everything familiar, their family, their school, their pets, their belongings, with little notice or understanding. And many enter care with just a trash bag of belongings, if that. A lot of foster parents say that kids come with just the clothes on their back. All of their decisions for their life are made in a courtroom. A judge determines every major decision for a child in foster care. Timelines, visitation schedules, reunification plans, and if where a child lives, how long they live there, that's all court ordered. Court hearings can be delayed or rescheduled, prolonging uncertainty. So there's a lot of times, like I said, it's hard to get parents' rights terminated, which I'm glad for. We can agree that it should be hard to terminate a parent's rights, because I'm a mom and I would hope that the bar would be pretty high for somebody to take my kids away permanently. They're terminating my rights. But with that, let's say a mom or a dad is given a plan to follow, and let's say they do a little bit of it and then they slip up, but it's not enough for the judge to be like, we're terminating your rights, we're going to give you another try. And because they try and give so many tries, a parent can really prolong this termination, which can really cause years of a kid not being able to find that permanence or be eligible for adoption. And other things, just like inefficiencies in the court systems, COVID shut down courts for a while, stuff like that, just like the kid kind of hangs in the balance. And children often have no or little to no voice in the courtroom. There's actually an attorney for the biological parents that's appointed, and there's an attorney for the Department of Children and Families, but there is no attorney appointed to the child themselves. So who is advocating for the child in a court of law? Usually they are assigned a guardian ad litem, or they are assigned a CASA worker, so a court-appointed special advocate. And that person is a volunteer. So if you want to share that volunteer role, anybody can become a CASA or a guardian ad litem. And you actually go spend time with the kid, understanding where do they want to live, how's their life, what have they been doing since they've been in foster care. We've had kids that have been in the Stable Moments program tell their guardian ad litem or their CASA worker that how much they enjoy Stable Moments, and we've actually gotten Stable Moments written into a court plan or court ordered for the kid to stay in a foster care setting with the Stable Moments program. So guardian ad litems or CASA workers are the voice of the child in the court, but they are not inherently appointed an attorney, and they don't get a CASA or guardian ad litem if there's not enough of those. So what do children in foster care face? Multiple placements. Children may move from home to home, sometimes a dozen times. A lot of times, a kid gets taken in an emergency placement. Let's say mom and dad have been arrested while the kid was at school. Let's say mom is found passed out from opiate use and the kid's found in the back seat. That kid's going to be taken that moment, and they don't have any preparation for it. That kid usually goes to an emergency foster placement. So somebody that is willing to open their doors, but they have signed up for these emergency placements where they take a kid in the middle of the night. But it's supposed to just be a short period of time, like days or weeks. And then the kid's going to go to the next place, right? But the system's going to have to find anybody that can take the kid, and it might be several emergency placements before the kid actually gets a longer term foster home. Meanwhile, the court's trying to figure out what they're doing with mom and what that plan is. So it's a lot of moving. And I know that just that is traumatic, but if you think about just your school districts where you're from, I know like if you just drive like a mile up the road, all those kids go to a different school district. Like there's so many schools just in my little area. So even if a kid's like kept in the same county but they just move homes, they're going to be moving schools every single time. And if you imagine those placements being 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 days or 2 months, those are short placements where a kid is moving school systems. So just more lack of continuity of care. They're going to miss school. They're going to lose their relationships with people that they had. Maybe they had one uncle that was really sweet in their life that they were able to see all the time that they're not able to see now. Best friends, kids of the neighborhood. And they're also going to get disrupted developmental milestones because unlike a kid that just stays in an environment for, pretty much one environment for their whole life, one school system with the same parents, they're going to be able to have all of their developmental milestones. Somebody has their eye on that. And but these kids may miss those because of all of the moving around and different caregivers. And supervised visits with biological families can be confusing, emotional, and inconsistent. So kids often are given supervised visits with their parents while they are in foster care, but this relies on the foster parent to be able to transport them or for the foster care system to be able to transport them. This relies on parent actually showing up. And even if everything goes great and they have a great support system to bring them to go see their parent and they have a visit, this visit can be tough because either it reopens old wounds, like it reminds them of their trauma or their neglect or it reminds them that they're not able to be with their mom and they want to just leave with their mom or leave with their caregiver that they know, but they have to go back with this lady that they barely know or their foster parent. So we often hear that kids' behaviors or kids regress or they act out more after every supervised visit. So it can be tough for the foster families as well because every time they have to bring a kid to a visit, then they have to deal with a few days of tough behaviors. So the harsh realities of the system is there's not enough beds. Like literally, there's not enough beds just to house kids that we are taking out of unsafe situations. Caseworkers are overburdened and they're unable to provide consistent support. So they have way too many kids on their caseloads where they have to go see these kids and put eyes on these kids. They have to manage all of these supervised visits and the foster care needs, the foster care parents' needs and the kids' needs and all of that. And they have to try and see everybody every single month. And oftentimes things fall through the cracks. Or there's such turnover that kids kind of get lost in like, I had this caseworker this month and then I was supposed to have a new caseworker. I haven't seen my mom in a month. So really the system's failings add to the kid's burden. Teens often age out of care without permanent connections. They face homelessness, unemployment, and incarceration at alarming rates. Also, the gap of children who graduate high school compared to kids that aren't in foster care is insane. So they really start behind the 8 ball coming into adulthood. So what's missing? Community accountability. When tragedy strikes, we often blame the system for not doing enough, okay? Horrific cases spark public outrage, leading to tighter restrictions and more removals. So we see a child that is just in horrific conditions and that they've been killed and that a caseworker was out there several times but didn't remove the kid from the home, and teachers may or may not have reported it, but it just fell through the cracks and the kid ends up dead. And those cases make people, as they should, completely furious, but they lead to policies where we go, oh my gosh, this can never happen again. We have to remove more kids. So we need the pendulum swings, and now we're taking all these kids out of the home. And now we have more of a crisis, and it's not necessarily the right action. It's just a reaction to these horrific cases. What's rarely addressed, though, is our own role. So as neighbors, educators, mentors, and community members, we have a role in this, one that isn't just freaking out and saying the system should have done better. So true change requires us to play that active role and not just react on the sidelines, okay? So let's recap. Although we agreed that we need foster care, so we agree that when bad things happen to kids or when kids are in unsafe scenarios, that they need to be removed. And we came up with foster care as the option. It just isn't the best scenario. Kids that have experienced foster care will rarely tell you that that was a great experience for them. Relying on the government to care for our children was never how it was meant to be. We were meant to care for the children in our communities and take that active role and step up for kids. So if you agree with me that it is all of our responsibility to raise children that are unwanted, neglected, abused in our community, and we all need to do our part, then let's figure out what your part is. And what your part might be is just sharing the stories, just letting people understand that there are kids right in your community that are in foster care, that need guardian ad litems, that need foster homes. The more foster homes in communities mean that kids can stay in the actual community and not have to move their schools. if you can't be a foster home, of course, just sharing the word. Talk to people about it. When you go to church, see who is in the foster care system, like who has gone through the training to be a foster parent. You can go through the training to be a foster parent and just offer respite. Foster parents cannot just have anybody babysit their kids. Anybody that's going to watch the kid actually has to be trained as a foster parent as well, which means you're not going to get anybody to watch your kid. But you can go and just get trained to be a respite provider. So you can go as small as being the person that's just going to share the word and start having the conversations. Maybe you're going to start talking to people that just, it's not on their radar at all. And bring up these questions like, do you think that we should be responsible for the kids in our community? And if we should, what are we doing about it? Above having those conversations, you can become a mentor. Of course, I'm going to say, go look up stablemoments.com/locations, find a location near you and become a mentor. You can support those families. I'm telling you, even if you just talk to families that are in it. I talked to somebody the other day and I was in an elevator at church and I said, my child had autism, and a woman said, oh, how are you managing that? And my husband was like, why did she ask you that? But I actually really loved that she asked me that. Most people just like, okay, whatever, and they don't want to talk about it, or they're just like, that's my deal. That's my journey. But this woman asked some questions and I got to tell her about my experience with navigating an autism diagnosis with a little guy. And I was like, I never get to talk to anybody about that. And so it was just nice, like somebody to talk to, somebody that wanted to understand my experience. And she really that's all she wanted. She was like, what is that like for you? And then she said, was it weird that I asked you that question? And I could have been offended because of the way she said it was kind of like, oh, how are you managing that? Like autism was a bad thing. But I didn't take it that way. I was like, I was ready to talk. And I just felt like I wish more people asked the question. I wish more people wanted to know about my experience. And so I share that because there are people out there that are fostering and they would love for somebody to understand their experience. And sometimes just asking the question like, oh, can you tell us about your foster care journey? Or how has that been for you? Or what have been the biggest challenges? Or what have been the biggest wins? Allows them to not feel so isolated. And if somebody is going to be bold and brave enough to open their home to a child, then the least we can do is listen to their story and be supportive in that way. So a small thing you can do is just ask more questions and open those doors for communication, because trust me, people feel like they're the only ones going through things. And it's because we all have stories and we are isolated. We're not going to go out and just share what's going on in our life. But when people ask, just to learn, I think that is what builds community. And you start feeling like, oh, I have a village. I have people that care. I have somebody that later on, if I see that person that asked me the questions, I can go up and say, I'm having a hard day. There's somebody that I would trust to lean on because they cared enough to ask some questions. So I don't like these posts about what we can do and play your role. And then it says become a foster parent, or just these lofty things that nobody's going to do. But can you ask more questions? Can you understand more experiences? Can you start the conversation? And if this episode helps you start the conversation, then awesome. Who do you know in your community that is a foster parent? Who do you know that are the local agencies helping these kids? I know a lot of those agencies take in clothes. They offer GED trainings or different things that they need volunteers for. So just go out and first claim that you do understand that you should play an active role in this crisis, and then just figure out what your role is. And it can be as small as asking some questions and choosing to put yourself out there, or it can be as big as becoming, a foster home. But whatever it is, be part of the solution. Understand where you are in that solution, and then be proud of it and walk forward in that. All right. I hope this was helpful. May is Foster Care Awareness Month. So do something in May. Make a goal for yourself to get out there and be part of the solution. I really want to thank you for being a big deal in the life of a child. Until next time.